The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
So welcome to this webinar as part of our Women in Leadership Day within our Virtual Leadership Summit for 2015. A warm welcome from a very wet London this afternoon. My name is Kate Hesk. I'm partner of the Performance Coach UK and really delighted to see so many people online for this live webinar. I'm joined by Monica Ross today and delighted to be so. I'd like to introduce a bit more about Monica in a minute, but just wanted to put this webinar firstly into perspective in line with what we're hoping to achieve through our Virtual Leadership Summit and through this particular day around women in leadership today. Our hope through the whole week of resources that we've made available via the Virtual Leadership Summit is that we are encouraging conversations to happen, productive conversations to happen within individuals and between individuals and across organisations. That's really our purpose as an organisation at the Performance Coach. And the particular perspective around women in leadership for us is not only relevant to women. We strongly believe that this is a topic for consideration for both every gender. And with the particular themes emerging for us. One is around authenticity, purpose, identity. There's another theme around authority and impact. And there's perhaps a further theme around resilience. And our hope today, through the resources that we're providing to you as part of the Women in Leadership Day, is that you will be able to access a perspective on any and all of those, whether you're a woman listening or whether you're a man listening. And today builds specifically around resilience, although through the conversation that I'll be having with Monica, we'll also be touching on purpose, identity, and authority and impact as well. So my hope is that wherever you are, you're able to hear the conversation and take part in the conversation. I'm really delighted to welcome Monica, as I said.
Thank you.
Monica is a leadership embodiment coach and coaching supervisor. She works with us at TPC and also with leaders and with other organisations to help people to really get a perspective on and increase their awareness on the impact that they have on others and how individual leaders may develop further in terms of their influence, particularly in the face of opposition. And the work that we're going to be doing today, we hope, will enable you to find a space of greater resilience in order to work in whatever perspective is relevant for you. So just as we move into arriving within the webinar, I'm going to encourage you to think about a few perspectives. And the first is, why are you interested in this? What is it that interests you about resilience, about leadership embodiment? And these questions are for you personally to reflect on. And as we're walking through the conversation today, which will take, I think, probably up to about 45 minutes, I'd encourage you to submit via your questions box in your webinar screen. Submit any questions or comments that you have, and we'll seek to build the conversation around those and, of course, to answer any of those. So the first question for you to reflect on is, why are you here? What interests you about this topic? And then thinking about your outcome for the next 45 minutes or so, what is it that you want to learn during this session entitled Resilience Through Leadership Embodiment? And then finally, how you need to be to get the most out of this session. What needs to be present for you? What quality do you want to bring into this moment, this very, hopefully very precious space that you've made for yourself? And I'd encourage you to jot down any thoughts that you have around those to help you get very present for the work that we're going to be doing this afternoon. So I'm going to bring Monica into the conversation now as we start to explore what it is that we're working with today, the conversation we're seeking to generate in ourselves, in yourselves, and in between people as well. The first question really, Monica, I guess, is what is resilience and what's your perspective on resilience?
Exactly, what is resilience? And it's interesting because if you look at resilient people, they appear to have found some sort of a system that works for them and that allows them to navigate really difficult circumstances, both personally and professionally, and to be really thoughtful and energized and effective in the face of difficulties around them. And resilience really shows up from childhood, and there are lots of studies done around what allows some children to be really resilient. For example, coming from poverty or really difficult family situations. And, why is it that others don't achieve this resilience? And there are lots of thoughts around, for example, it could be nutrition, it could be IQ, it could be something about nurturing. So resilience shows up in our past. If we've had difficult childhood, sometimes people can overcome it and do amazing things. Also, there's everyday adversities. For example, things in the office, even traveling to work, deadlines that you're facing, conflicts, the stuff of every day, and the environment that we're living and working in now has become so complex and so fast that we really do need to have more resilience. It's not just a sort of a nice thing to have. It's actually a core competency almost that we need to have.
And I'm just adding some of my personal experience from the clients that I'm working with at the moment, Monica. There is a real sense of pace and complexity, I think. And so often people that I'm speaking to are saying, I need space in order to create my own ability to be more resilient. And I'm just noticing already people are sending comments and thoughts and questions, which is great. So Sarah is letting us know that she's addressing or resilience is being addressed in her organisation. And my perspective is, from the people that I'm working with very often, that it is something that's really coming into awareness, the importance of focusing on helping, support and develop people to be more resilient. And one of the words that's come in, Vincenzo has suggested that the word is elasticity, so to be able to recover quickly. And I know when we're talking to clients, we talk about bounce back, homeostasis, if you want to use a term, and that ability to return to, recover quickly or return to the status quo. So I really like that sense of elasticity and that sense of returning to something.
And that elasticity, it fits in very well when I'll start speaking about the leadership embodiment piece, because I thought I'd start with resilience, because quite often it's through the absence of resilience that we recognize what it is or what it isn't. And resilience also shows up in major setbacks in life, like the death of a loved one or a serious illness, really serious things that can knock us back. And quite often people are still working in organizations trying to carry difficult situations in their personal and professional life, like uncertainty about their job, lots of really serious things. And most people, I suppose, manage by compartmentalizing. Day to day they're moving from one compartment to the other and doing their best to hold it all together. And one thing I suppose we don't think about resilience is that actually, if you're really resilient, it's not just about coping, it's also about being able to achieve much more. You really learn to release huge positive energy, and that's where you move into legacy. That's where you're really able to, expand, be expansive, and reach out beyond something else. So, I thought I'd bring in the positive side of it's much bigger than just coping with difficulties.
So there's a question that's coming around whether or not resilience and the degree of resilience is related to how good an individual is at focusing on a goal. So a question coming out there about focus, I think, and the relevance of being able to focus on a goal, developing resilience. What's your thoughts on that?
And focusing on a goal is great. It's a lot easier when things are calm. It's when things become really challenging and you have a lot of complexity or a lot of uncertainty around you. That's when your normal coping mechanisms are challenged. So even people who find that they're great at focusing and can be almost, they're able to really have a laser view of things, they're often, I suppose, knocked sideways when something really big comes their way. That they find they're not achieving their goal because they're either depleted or exhausted, or they just lose focus. So yes. So that brings me to what is leadership embodiment? And there were two words there, leadership and embodiment. And I'll just share with you, leadership embodiment is a practice that was created by a lady called Wendy Palmer. There are also other practitioners like Strozzi Heckler, but the one that I have trained in is a lady called Wendy Palmer, who's a black belt several times over in Aikido. And leadership embodiment is based on both Aikido and mindfulness. And Aikido has a philosophy around, the idea is that you protect your attacker, and that might sound like a funny thing for a martial art, but it actually is the idea that nobody gets up in the morning to cause problems for others. Everybody, is doing their best, and sometimes if people are difficult, it's actually that they're suffering, they're not in a good place already. So it's about having compassion, and it's about being able to see them as part of us rather than separate from us. The mindfulness piece is very much around creating that space that you were talking about a moment ago. It's about being able to be with the present moment and creating a place to step back to. We might even say a home for you to go to with yourself, so that you can just observe what's happening, be aware of what's happening in your body when challenges are around you, because that would be the first sign that you're moving into a reactive pattern, which won't be useful. So just to give you a sense as well that if we're in a situation of not being resilient, quite often people begin to catastrophize. They think it's a life or death situation. There's a lot of negative self-talk going on, which only adds to the sense of panic. And what happens quite often is that inaccurate thinking causes inappropriate responses, because the body goes into a fight, flight, or freeze response. And instead of being able to respond from a place of clarity or resourcefulness, your whole body begins to mobilize itself for either attacking or retreating or just closing down. So the leadership embodiment part with both mindfulness and Aikido practices, what we do is we're actually using the body. We study using the body. We create, it's like a simulation of stressors, just like pilots have to go into a simulator to learn how to manage in really difficult circumstances when they're flying. Then we use the body to study what happens under stress. Now, normally we would do that with physical movement. Obviously, today we're doing a webinar, so I won't be able to invite you to push and pull each other. But we can do some of the exercises that will allow you to bring a place of presence to yourself. So actually that leads me in nicely to the 4-part centering exercise, which is foundational.
And just before we move into that, Monica, I'm just going to invite the audience. This is the point where you can start to work with this with us. Monica's going to talk us through the exercise. We're going to encourage you to work with the exercise as we're working with it together in the room here. And at the end, when we've worked with the centering, we're going to invite you to share your experiences, so how it's making you feel, what you're thinking as a result of it. So encourage you to really enjoy the opportunity to practice this and learn about the exercise with Monica, and then we'll seek your views and feelings on the experience.
So it is a 4-part centering exercise, and The first part has to do with posture and breath. So wherever you are at the moment in the world, I'm inviting you, I'm presuming that you're seated. And so I'm inviting you to make good contact with the floor, with your feet, and to move a little bit forward in your seat so you have a stable base. And then you'll notice that there are two bones at the bottom of your torso. These are called your sitting bones. So my invitation is for you to press down, and as you do that, you'll notice that your spine immediately becomes more upright and dignified. And if you just tuck down your chin a little bit so that your head, your spine is completely straight, and it means that your head is resting on your torso. This allows you to have clarity, and it allows the energy to flow freely in your body. The second part is where you become aware of the space around you. Space is a resource, and you have, we call it peripersonal space in a lot of the research that's done now. They talk about we can map, the mind can map the body. So if you're a golfer, for example, you can map out as far as the end of your golf stick. So we're going to just use space today to create a home for you to go to. So my invitation is for you to become aware of the space around you. You might notice heat coming from your body. And as you do that, it's an inquiry. Ask yourself, what if my energy, what if my space were equal and even in front of me and behind me? And just allow your body to feel for that. And what if my space were equal and even to the left and right of me? And again, allow your body to find that equilibrium. And what if my space were equal and even above my head and below my feet? And again, notice how your body can adjust itself. And you might notice just a feeling of being held in your own energy, being connected within yourself. The third part is where we begin to relax and let the body go to gravity. So quite often we hold tension in different places. So become aware of your jaw and let that go to gravity. And let it become heavy and warm. Imagine it's like melting butter, melting chocolate. And your shoulders, let them become warm, let them relax, and just surrender to gravity. And anywhere else that you hold tension, maybe even let your tongue relax, your belly. And the fourth part is where we bring in a quality, and we call it an energetic quality because it's not just a mental thing, it's about your whole being. So I'm going to invite you to bring in the quality of ease this afternoon. And again, it's an inquiry. What if I had just 5% more ease in my being right now? What would that be like? And when you ask the body and the mind a question, they immediately start to look for that. And notice how that feels. Feel free to come back with any expressions of what that feels like. And now that you've experienced the centering, which is the foundation, and actually it's not just a once-off thing, this is something that the more you do it, the faster it gets, and it's like building a muscle. By teaching your body to recover using the centering exercise, you can become more resourceful in difficult situations. So quite often you might do it, every time you switch on your computer or when you're in traffic. The more you do it, the more it's available to you. Now I'm going to invite you to actually use this in a practical, something that maybe you've experienced recently. So I'm going to invite you to think of something that caused you stress or caused you frustration recently. And I would like to invite you to really be aware that only choose something that's not 100% stressful, maybe 40%, something that maybe you've already handled, but you'd still remember it when you begin to recall it. So just connect with that now, and I'm going to invite, at this moment here, I'm going to invite Kate to think of something. Have you thought of something, Kate? Okay. So just connect with that and be there now. And as you're connecting with it, notice what happens in your body.
So I feel a tension.
Where's the tension?
It's kind of around my chest, kind of at the centre of my ribcage, my sternum, really. So I feel a real tension there, a real tightness.
And is that your heart, or is it?
No, somehow it's just to the right of my heart.
Okay.
Yes, but it's very central to my chest. So.
Yeah, and we each have our own favourite place in our body. Some people get it up in their throat. They find they can hardly speak sometimes. Some people get a really strong sensation in their solar plexus. It can vary, but you'll know yourself. So now maybe just shake that off a little bit. And now I'm going to guide you through the centering practice again. And so again, making good contact with the floor, dignified upright posture, begin to breathe up, and a long, slow exhale, twice as long as the inhale. Then become aware of your space around you. What if that were equal and even to the back and front, left and right, above your head and below your feet. And then allow everything to go to gravity. Your jaw, your shoulders, maybe your tongue, your forehead. And then bring in a quality of ease. What if you had just 5% more ease in your body right now? And now think of the situation again. And be there now. And let me know if you notice anything different. So Kate, what did you notice?
So the words that are coming up for me is that I notice flow. There's something around trust. So the situation I was thinking of is something that I've worked through. But actually what the sense was, as you were asking me to imagine it differently this time, was that I did and I can flow through it. So there is encouraging me to trust my sense of being able to, it's something about juggling and managing priorities, getting it all done, and experiencing that the second time was about recognising that I did it and that there can be flow in the next time I'm faced with that, encountering that situation.
And the more you practice the centering, the more that's available to you without even thinking about it. It becomes, like an unconscious competence. That what it does is it creates a window for us. It's almost like before our usual reactive pattern, whatever that might be for you, that you create a window or a space where you have a moment of choice to do it differently. And that means that you might just stop yourself before you say something to somebody, do the centering, and recognize then that you connect with, maybe they really are trying to offer you something useful. For example, in difficult feedback sometimes, people react to just words instead of listening to the whole story and hearing the real concern behind what's being offered, or the real gift behind what's being offered. So it allows you to have clearer thinking. It allows you to have a bigger focus, because normally when we're stressed, we begin to close off and we begin to have what we call gun focus. It's like when in America they talk about if somebody's holding a gun to you, you look at the gun, you'll remember everything about the gun, you won't even see the person who's holding it, because your focus goes right down to the problem.
So I'm just going to pause for a minute there and see
Lovely.
if people are willing to continue to send in comments, thoughts, qualities that are emerging for you. Just words, just to type them into the question box. Some of the things that are already coming out, Monica, are around words like choice, space, connection, clarity. A lot of that resonates with what you were just saying as well. So as we work through the rest of the session, really invite people to keep sending in and keep interacting with the opportunity to share, a sense of how you're feeling and the qualities that are emerging for you.
And just to add, there's something around when you connect back to yourself, when you create that space for yourself, you really do connect with what's important to you, and you can include the other person, so it changes what goes on for them in the relationship.
So let's think about how we do some of this. How do we develop greater resilience? And as again, we're going to talk through some points here on the slide, and we're going to discuss it here. But we really invite your contributions to this. I'm getting some comments just before we move into that from people. Thank you very much for the contributions. I'm seeing words like peace, clarity, and focus, and also lightness, distance from the trigger.
And that's exactly it. Yeah. Because it is about being able to access the resourceful part of yourself rather than the part of you that, the body mobilizes itself very quickly into stress. And by you're interrupting it, you're actually bringing yourself back to a place where you can handle things, where you can see somebody differently, where you can have a different quality of conversation with somebody.
So I'm seeing a dispassionate view is one comment, and taking care of yourself. And we're going to move more into that, aren't we? And thinking about how we can develop greater resilience.
So we've just been going through the centering, and what I would like to really impress on you is that the more you practice it, the more it's in the muscle. So, for example, I have an app on my iPhone, and I can give Kate the details of it afterwards, but I've been using it for years, and every now and again it gives a little ding, and I just center myself. It's really about making this part of your practice. Some of you may already have your own versions of mindfulness and breath work, whatever works for you. I would invite you to find some practice that works for you. In terms of bringing in inspiration, what I mean here is that quite often leaders, male and female, feel very alone. One of the things that people say to me quite often is, I'm facing this huge conflict or this huge challenge, and really it feels like it's me against the world. And so when we talk in leadership embodiment about bringing in inspiration, there are various ways of doing that. One of them is, if you think right now, if you think of any leader, or doesn't even have to be, a world famous leader, it could even be somebody in your own life or in your organization who really inspires you, that you think, wow, I would love to have some of the qualities that that person has. And if you could for a moment imagine that you could bring that into yourself, what if I had a little bit more of that person's confidence? What if I was able to speak my truth like that person? What if I was really able to handle difficult situations with that much openness and compassion? So, right now, identify for yourself somebody. It could even be, a grandfather, it could be somebody, a teacher, mentor, somebody that really inspires you. And if you think about leaders who inspire, for example, I might say Nelson Mandela or some of the really famous people, they're able to hold a huge group of people with their presence, with their energy, and they include people. So, it's about inspiring yourself with somebody that you could access when you're in a tight situation. You might even say, well, what would Nelson Mandela say right now? What would he offer to me? Another way of bringing in support and bringing in resilience is by accessing your personal supporters. Now you might say, what does that mean? What it means is that if you, and I'm inviting you to do this now, think back in your life of all the people who've ever believed in you. Right back to when you were in school, when you were a child, somebody who listened to, somebody who really saw you. And not just one person, but start writing down right now as we're speaking, all of the people in your life who've seen you, given you opportunities, believed in you maybe when others didn't. Write down their names. I have a notebook where I keep in leadership embodiment, we call it the posse. It's your group of people who will go out and support you when things are difficult. And as you collect those names and write them down right now, and connect with those people and what it was that they brought to you, imagine that each one of them is standing behind you with their hand on your shoulder saying, I'm here for you right now. I see what you're doing. I see your challenges. And I still believe in you. And it could even be people who are no longer with us. So just notice what happens in you as you connect with your very personal supporters.
Again, really invite you to share any experience of that you're willing to and would like to via the questions. Some of the sense that I'm getting as you're saying that, Monica, is a real sense of pride, actually. So feeling pride in myself that is enabled by them, which I would have struggled to access, I think, without having the opportunity to think about their support. So,
And we do forget when we're in times of difficulty or challenge, there's that sense of being completely alone. And we forget all the good things we've done. I think it was in one of the articles, Jackie Holder's article that I read today, it was around collecting your achievements. Have a notebook where you write down your achievements and remind yourself. That's another way of doing it, because we completely forget that what we're good at, and we only focus on what we can't do in those situations.
Lovely. So we're getting some great comments about the power of that exercise already. So thank you for that. And some of the other points that are coming in are around leadership and how this really relates to leadership, and a sense of how to use some of these things to refocus the mind and focus on what's important, as well as the sense that true leadership is about doing the right thing, even in the face of adversity, and even if a sense that that things are hard on a particular day.
And there are 3 competencies in leadership embodiment. So the first one is inclusivity. And I mentioned that a little bit already, that when a leader is able to include all of his followers, all of the organization, those people will really follow that person to the ends of the earth. And for example, in difficult conversations, if you're able to include the other person, even if the other person doesn't agree with you, they will feel the inclusivity, and it softens them towards you. I've done this many times myself, so I can guarantee that it works. I invite, for example, people who are about to hold a meeting to go into the room in advance, and what I would call to own the room. So if you remember back when we were doing the centering exercise, let's just try this for a moment, actually, if you'd like to try this. So again, just become aware of your posture, become upright and dignified, tucking down your chin. Begin to breathe up the back this time, and a long, slow exhale down the front, softening your front as you go, becoming more available. And I'll do the breath again, so breathing up the spine, which makes you more upright, and it also brings that strength into your spine. A long, slow exhale down the front, and think of somebody that makes you smile as you breathe down. That brings oxytocin in, which is the softness and the connection chemical. And then become aware of your space. Now this time I'm going to ask you to expand your space even further. So expand your space to include somebody that you may have been thinking about. For example, somebody that you might have got an email from, or somebody you've had to have a difficult conversation with. Just imagine that your energy expands around them, even if they're not in the room, to include them. And I'm going to challenge you to expand your energy even further. If you could expand your energy field equally and evenly all around, back, front, left, right, above your head and below, to include your whole organization. That might feel big, but it is possible. And relax the jaw, the shoulders, anywhere where you hold tension, and bring in that quality of ease. And you might even have another quality you'd like to bring in yourself, something that would support you. So when you expand your energy field, and as I said, you can do this as you enter a meeting room, you can include everybody in it. If you're going to have a conversation with one person, you can include them. The idea is that you're still in the center of your own energy field, but it's almost like there's a version of that person, front, back, left, right, above and below. And they will feel your inclusivity. It's a really useful exercise for presenters. Own the room, take in and include everyone.
And this comment came in a little while ago, but I think it's very relevant to what you've just said, that the comment is about it being a physical sense of energy moving from one person to you. So, and that relates really to the whole of that conversation. It was a comment from Catherine. So, yeah, really
because we are all connected, you know, whether we realize it or not, we are connected, and we're constantly picking up messages from each other before we even open our mouth. We're like radio senders and receivers of messages from each other. So if there's a message of inclusivity that you're sending out, another person will feel that.
And we talk a lot with clients often about emotional intelligence and the sense of mirror neurons and the whole concept of neuroscience now being much about that information that's conveyed between two individuals. So that's inclusivity. It's whatever somebody's thinking can be conveyed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And the next piece is centered listening. And what that means is that when you listen, because you're including somebody, you're able to listen to the whole message. You know, this is, I mentioned it earlier, it's very useful if you have to give feedback to somebody or receiving feedback, because usually we receive that in a sort of a closed down way. But if you open up and include the other person and see the space, it's almost like what they say, see it landing in the space between you, and allow yourself some time to really hear it and to pick it up, you'll actually find that you feel empathy for the person. It might sound strange that I'm saying this, but it does happen. And that you'll hear what they really want to say to you underneath what mightn't always be skillful ways of delivering it.
Yeah, and as a coach, I truly believe that the quality of my listening has a direct impact on the quality of somebody else's thinking. So
Mm.
maybe that develops from, centered listening really does enable something in others.
Absolutely. It allows a person to hear themselves, actually. It allows them to connect with their own truth. And as well as that, it really allows them to know where you're coming from, your authenticity. Because we'll always struggle to communicate well when there's high stakes. But if you're able to listen in a centered way and receive in a centered way, it changes the dynamics. And taking a stand, for leaders, it's really important. We have to be able to take a stand, which means, we might need to make a decision that isn't popular. We may need to, for example, bring a project over the line when there's a lot of resistance. Taking a stand, it's also called advocacy. It's where you're able to come from your own integrity, your own authenticity, and you bring forth your message, you express it with absolute respect for the other person, even if they don't agree with you. So the taking a stand is to be able to say something clearly from your own center, from a real deep congruence within yourself. And usually the other person will receive it. They may not agree with you, but there will be a respect. And that's the difference.
And my experience in this is very relevant, I think, for today, particularly of what we talk about around developing women leaders. My experience tells me is about how to have authority and impact. So how to find voice to be able to do that in a way that's congruent with self and has the impact that we're seeking for it to have. And it's not just a female challenge, I know, and sometimes it does seem to be a particular challenge that women have.
I agree. I think sometimes women have some powerful things to say and they're afraid to say them, or they're not able to access, because it can be quite scary to say something that many people may not agree with, but that actually is really important and needs to be said. So I know from my own experience in my life, I used to not be very skillful at speaking my truth. And this work has actually helped me an awful lot to say things when there are high stakes, when it's really important. And to be able to access my own inner power. And, the emotion will be around it, but I'm able to express it in a way that is clearly heard.
So again, just to pause for a minute and see what comment we have from the audience. So really encourage you to keep sharing your experience of this. What is it provoking for you in terms of your own sense of how you develop a greater sense of centered leadership, or how you support that in others? What is the relevance of this to women specifically? We'd be very interested to help you share some of that if you're willing to do so via the questions.
I'd love to hear some thoughts and experiences.
So as we wait for some of those thoughts to be shared, it's a case of starting to wrap this into conclusion, really. And I just wonder, Monica, from your experience, what are some of the successes that you've experienced around using leadership embodiment, working with resilience? Are you willing to share any examples of when it's really worked well?
For example, I worked with a leader who was really having huge challenges with his communication and his behaviour style. He was perceived as very arrogant, very closed, and wasn't willing to listen to his team, his senior management team. And through this work, he gained an awareness, because we work physically, as I mentioned earlier. I was able to show him his own reactive pattern and to give him real examples of what he does in real life. And once he saw the shape that his body went into, he couldn't deny it. You know, that's the great thing about when you see something and feel it in your body. And what happened was he really began to own his own leadership. He realized actually he was playing small, and he was appearing to cut himself off and to be arrogant, but actually it's that he wasn't taking his full power.
Yeah.
And so he began to, using one of the exercises about owning the room, instead of hiding off in a corner when there were, you know, big meetings with conflict, he would actually take up a position in the centre, include everybody, and they noticed that he was listening to them.
Yeah.
You know, it really changed things. And for example, for women to really be able to express the truth of what they want to offer, to you know, to recognize that it's important to actually be congruent, and if you're divided within yourself, then you're not going to, your message is going to immediately bring conflict from outside. So for example, I've worked with one female leader around congruence, and we use the three centres, the head, the heart and the gut. And it was amazing to hear the difference. She worked very much from her head.
Yeah.
And by bringing her heart in and her, what we would call her centre or her gut, and aligning those three voices, the power that came from her voice was just amazing. And she was moved by her own power.
And as you were starting to say all of that, it absolutely made me think about how to get people out of their head for a while and into their body. I mean, that's simplistically how we describe it. And then, as you said at the beginning, I think very often when we're thinking about resilience as well, it's so much about how we deal with the pace and the complexity of today to make space to be able to get out of our head and to allow ourselves to inhabit our body a little more rather than thinking and doing and speaking.
Exactly, because the head will continue to churn out thoughts, and it can actually hijack us. It can bring us into a place of being so stressed that we're not able to respond. So using, you know, all three centres and creating that space so that you can step back and breathe and come out with a different response. As I said earlier, it's creating a home to go to, you know, several times a day if necessary, where you just hear your own truth and then bring it out into the world.
Thank you. So, as always, we're going to end up being short of time, and we need to start to think about wrapping up the conversation. And before we lead into that, now some people are writing some comments and questions. So the question is specifically, what advice might Monica have for those final straw situations where the emotions take over and the ability to do all these great things around inclusivity, centered listening, taking a stand, shuts down because it's just not possible in the grip, in that moment. And that's from Julia.
What I have found, you know, in my own moments, because it doesn't matter how much self-development we do, our body will always, you know, react. What I find, even if you couldn't remember all of the 4-part centering, the long, slow exhale is really effective, because what it does is it drains the stress chemical cortisol out of your body, and it brings in the testosterone, which is the performance and the functioning. So it'll clear your mind. So, you know, right now I'm just going to do an in-breath, and just a normal in-breath, and then the more you can practice even that, you'll find that it creates a space for yourself. And if necessary, I would say go out of the room, you know, take a walk, go somewhere, have a drink of water, do something to interrupt, because, you know, we call that an amygdala attack, a hijack, where your whole body is galvanized. But you can actually calm down. I know myself, because I have what I call my terror before the day. Usually if I'm doing a really important piece of work, I go through my own version, and it absolutely works for me. So I would invite you to build the muscle.
Yeah, absolutely. It's practice, isn't it? Okay, so let's start to conclude the session then, and in doing so, I'd invite everybody to return your thoughts to where it was you started 50 minutes ago. What was it that you came here for, and just to start to reflect on why did you sign up to this? What was it you were hoping to get from this session this afternoon? What did you want to learn when we started the conversation, and indeed, what have you learned? So you may want to jot yourself some thoughts down. And we also asked you the question about how you needed to be. So as you move into this reflective space now, in conclusion, I really encourage you to think about how are you going to take this forward. It might be about a practice that you're going to commit to for yourself individually. It might be about a conversation you want to go away and have with yourself, with others. And I'm hoping that the learning that you've had will enable you to do that.
I'm wondering, Kate, would it be possible to share the word format of the 4-part centering with everybody who signed up?
Absolutely. So as a follow-on to today, if you're interested in receiving it, we can of course send you a bit more detail about the 4-part centering exercise. We'd be really happy to do that. And if there is further conversation, or if there are further questions that you have that you'd like to pose to myself or to Monica, then please do send those in via the website. In response, we will come back to you, and we'd love to continue the conversation. And we hope that whatever it was you were seeking to get out of this session, that you've achieved that and more today, and that this will enable you to move into that space of leadership embodiment in a greater way. So I really thank you very warmly, Monica, for being here today.
Thank you to everybody who has participated and shared thoughts and words and questions. I really value that.
So thank you for being involved, and we'll end the webinar